Okay, guys, we are live, and I basically want to do a kind of a review of Jackson Hinkle's performance with Tim Pool. And guys, Jackson Hinkle did a great job talking with Piers Morgan and debating that fake Russian tribe guy. If you guys know what I'm talking about. And so, for some reason, in this conversation, particularly with Tim Pool, I mean, he's not doing like a complete. He's not doing a horrible job, but it's not that great either. And I don't know if he's trying to just dumb down the message for Temple's audience. I hope that's what it is, but I don't know. I just wish Jackson would have done a lot better in this conversation. And plus, there's some stuff on here that he says where I just make me as a monarchist cringe a bit. But then, and it's not the fact that I'm a monarchist. There's just some stuff I just wish Jackson did better in explaining than what he did right here in this conversation with Tim Pool. But let's check it out.
The fact of the matter is, Russia controls 87,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. The ratio of Russian troops to Ukrainian troops lost is insane. Ukraine's lost 400,000 plus men. Russia maybe 150,000. They have no reason to do something.
Yeah, this part right here. Why is he saying 150,000? Come on, Jackson. Like seriously, 150,000. That's the wounded, like people who are in the hospital. We're talking about soldiers who are wounded who are in the hospital. Um, the dead. So Russia's losses regarding dead soldiers is 65,000, but like 150,000 are in the hospital. So once those guys are better able to perform at the line of duty, they'll be back in the battle again. So I don't know. I don't know why Tim Pool said 150,000. I'm thinking, what? You mean 150,000 wounded? We're talking about like the dead. So because Ukraine lost 400,000 dead soldiers. It's not including wounded and it's not including like wounded and dead soldiers. It's just dead soldiers. 400,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers. And then he says 150,000 Russians. Not really. Most likely 65,000. Some people say like even less than that, probably 40,000. But that's just the dead soldiers. So um, yeah, so like this is just an example. I don't know why he said 150,000 when it should have been 65,000. If I was there and I was trying to compare the Ukrainian losses and Russian losses, I would have mentioned the 400,000 Ukrainian soldiers and the 65,000 Russian soldiers, and that's a huge difference right there. And so I don't know why Jackson Hinkle said 150,000. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if he's been on like this type of big show before, although he's been on Piers Morgan. So, but yeah, maybe he was just nervous. I don't know. I hope that's what it was.
Thing as extreme as this, and that really wouldn't be in Putin's, line of governance either.
Let's make all of the corporate media outlets happy and give them an article to write about.
Yeah.
What's the likelihood you think that the U.S. would engage in a false flag to justify expanding the war in Ukraine?
I think they already did. I mean, that was 2014 when the Maidan massacre took place. The Western press all said it was a bunch of, Ukrainian government, Yanukovych-aligned individuals that rained down with sniper fire on the protesters in Maidan Square. 12 years later, we learned that it was actually Georgian Legion snipers that were out there.
9 years.
9 years. 9 years later.
2014 and 2015.
9 years later. It was Georgian snipers that were out there at the behest of the.
Yeah, you guys see Jackson, like he might be I don't know, a little bit nervous being on the show probably because he said 12 years when Tim Pool correctly told him 9 years. And so like that's probably what happened initially with the 150,000 soldiers. That's probably what Jackson was probably thinking about, the 150,000 wounded soldiers. And so right here he says 12 years later. So like I don't know, maybe he's just excited being on this show. And yeah, but because also before I continue, I want you guys to know, like a disclaimer, I did not see the whole segment. Basically, this is just a clip basically of their conversation about Russia winning the war. And there's other there's I think there's like a full version, a full conversation. And so I hope Jackson did better in the other, on the other topics they talked about. But this particular topic about Russia winning, Jackson did not do that great, in my opinion. I just hope he does better. But he mentions Georgian snipers. So um, I don't know if it's 100% factual. I don't know if it was proven. Now, there were snipers. There were mysterious snipers during the Maidan coup. There were mysterious snipers. Of course, the pro-Ukrainian side would always claim, oh, it was Berkut. It was Yanukovych's, Berkut's forces. No, it wasn't. Berkut literally did not fire anything until like the last day when they had to evacuate themselves out of the city, out of Kiev. But Berkut, you can see in the video footage that there's that the Ukrainian side, even without the snipers, if you just get rid of the snipers, the Ukrainian side, they had like shotguns, rifles, and they're just shooting straight at the Berkut guys. And you see on footage where the Berkut guys are standing at formation with their shields up, and still some of the Berkut guys are being knocked down with rifles. And there's rifle shots you can see clearly from the pro Maidan side. You see from their side they're just shooting right at the Berkut's soldiers, and the Berkut soldiers, some of them just keep falling to the ground, and you see the Berkut guys picking one of their guys up, trying to take him behind the lines. And so even without the snipers, the pro Maidan side, they were the ones who were armed with guns and rifles. And so you have that part, and then the mysterious snipers, because what's interesting is that the pro Maidan side was not able to even prove that it was Yanukovych's people. And for some reason, the ones who got shot by the snipers were also the Berkut guys, and of course some of the Maidan people were shot by the snipers. But regarding Georgian snipers, I don't think I've really even heard this one, so I don't think it's really even verified. I mean, people could do their own research, and this research that Jackson Hinkle is referring to, maybe he's right. But I remember literally like a year after the whole Maidan situation, I remember a Polish politician, he said that it was them. He said that it was Polish snipers. He said that their own government sent in Polish snipers. And this was a politician. This is someone, who has access to a lot of information like this. And so it could have been Polish snipers. And maybe it was Georgian snipers. So I don't know. I don't know if it's been proven that it's Georgian snipers or not. But Jackson seems to be talking with confidence here. So, and maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. But I'll still be careful on just straight up 100% asserting who it really is, because I don't think there really is any direct proof who it was. One thing for sure is that those snipers were mysterious, and no one really found out who they were. But of course, Jackson's saying that it was Georgian snipers, and maybe they were. So I don't know. For me, it's still a mystery.
Ukrainian, now new Ukrainian government,
We know that for sure. I've not heard that.
Yeah. Canadian researcher, look him up. He did the study. It was Georgian snipers that did it. Also, in Oliver Stone's documentary, he touched on that subject. But
by the way, the Oliver Stone documentary, it could have been better. He literally could have just skipped the first. He literally could have cut out the first 30 minutes of the movie, and then the last 10 minutes were like, where's this going? So Oliver Stone, great filmmaker, but his documentary about the Maidan situation, it could have been better. So yeah, the first 30 minutes I would have just cut out just boring information. I mean, it's not boring for me. I like this information, but if you're trying to capture the audience, just start off with the whole Maidan stuff. Don't get into the whole history of Soviet Ukraine and then post-Soviet Ukraine. Just kind of get into the last 10 years or something. And then Oliver Stone at the end of his documentary, I don't know, probably not even 10 minutes, probably 15 minutes. It's off the subject. It's a different subject, kind of. Like it ties in back to like Maidan, but like loosely, I'm thinking, okay, literally, like this documentary could have been better if you just cut out like the first 30 minutes and cut out the last 10 to 15 minutes, and boom, you'd have like a really exciting documentary. But that's just my opinion.
The snipers were firing from the buildings around Maidan Square that were controlled by the Azov aligned individuals within the grab for power.
So here's all I can say as to that claim. Western media outlets say that it's propaganda issued by Russia, and Russian outlets say it's confirmed. So this is war.
It's war.
Who are you siding
People
with?
will die. People will die.
But just like the idea that I will say it's not above.
So I don't remember Russia really focusing on this whole situation regarding the snipers. I mean, like there were Russian researchers in 2014, 2015, but like regarding right now the whole Maidan situation, like the Russian government doesn't even care about that, right? I don't know, like because that like I don't remember like the Russian government even talking about this or bring or like I remember the Russian government like saying, okay, we're going to save the people from in the Donbass region. It's been eight years of Ukraine violating the Minsk Accords. The people are suffering, so we're going to save them, and denazification, and like that's it. But like I don't think Russia really cares about like what happened in Maidan in 2014 at this moment. Like so I don't know why Tim Pool is saying, oh, like Russia's talking about it. I don't think Russia's talking about it anymore. Like from like all the stuff that I watch, all the stuff that I research. Like now, of course, there could be individual Russians who could bring this information up and talk about it and still be interested in the whole Maidan coup situation, but that's like an old topic. Like the Russian government doesn't really care about discussing at the moment. Like, and Russia's third reason was obviously to get NATO make sure NATO does not join Ukraine either, because like Russia cannot afford to have Ukraine be a NATO ally. So yeah, but like I don't think Russia even cares about the whole sniper situation right now at the moment. Like they have bigger fish to fry. But individual Russians who do their own independent research, sure, they might talk about it. So I don't think Tim Pool is correct in asserting that Russia is bringing this up. So, and actually, I don't think even Western media really cares about this right now, about the snipers in Maidan.
Any warring nation to engage in a false flag, especially as it pertains to overthrowing a government. The U.S. is going to claim, and Western powers are going to claim, this is what the Russian-aligned government was doing, and Russia's going to claim it was Western forces trying to overthrow the government and install their puppet.
And then also,
that's true. And then, but Russia and Ukraine went to war in 2022. But Ukraine went into a civil war in 2014, and so a lot of the accusations came from the so-called separatists, right? From the Donetsk and Lugansk rebels. And not just them, you had people inside inside the Ukrainian government that also said the same stuff. Then they mysteriously disappeared, or they had to escape to Belarus or to Russia to find refuge. Then, of course, like the whole Maidan coup, it inspired the people, not just the Donbass region. There were other miniature rebellions throughout the country, but the Donbass, they were the most successful in doing this and keeping the Ukraine at bay.
I mean, look at this. You have the, I won't give my full opinion on YouTube, but you have the Nord Stream pipeline incident. And you had everyone in the West who's saying that was Russia. It was definitely Russia. And I think everyone knows who it really was. You can look at the Kremlin drone attack. They were saying that was a false flag by Russia. Then we turned to find out that the Ukrainian government put a postage stamp out celebrating a Ukrainian soldier flying the drone over the Kremlin and bombing it. I mean, the list goes on. I'm sure Russia, maybe this is war. False flags happen. But
absolutely. And let's clarify. We have this from the Washington Post. U.S. had intelligence of detailed Ukrainian plan to attack Nord Stream pipeline. The CIA learned last June.
Washington Compost, fake news. We all know who really did it.
A European spy agency that a 6-person team of Ukrainian Special Operations Forces intended to sabotage the Russian to Germany natural gas project. They claimed over and over and over.
Hey, don't blame us. Blame Ukraine. So if Germany ever wants to complain about the Nord Stream pipeline, or like accuse us of doing this. No, 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 no. That was not us. That was totally Ukraine. You know, like we tried to help them, but these Ukrainians, I don't know why they tried to hurt you, Germany. You're our ally. Yeah, blame Ukraine for this.
Again, that Russia did it. They even speculated that Russia could have dropped a bomb through the pipeline, so when it got to that point, it blew up, which makes literally no sense. Russia.
That's some kind of, I don't know, James Bond stuff right there.
Vladimir Putin being like, I have the perfect way to defeat my enemies. I'll blow up my own oil pipeline. What?
It didn't make any sense, and yet this was all of the West.
As Scott Ritter would say, that Russia literally has like this red button in Russia that literally you just press it and it just shuts down the entire Nord Stream pipeline. You just press it, and boom, the whole pipeline is shut down. like no need for any special military operation. You just go boom, it's over, shut down automatically. Yeah, like we all know who really did it. Like actually, like most, like even most Americans, you know, like despite the fact that I don't give too much credit to the American voter, but even regarding this situation, even most Americans either just know who did it, or they at least like have a suspicion who did it, you know, who benefits, you know, at least they have an understanding of who would actually benefit from this. So like no one really believes that that Russia did it. No one believes that Ukraine did it. Like most people here in the U.S., you know, like just kind of, even like liberal voters will have to kind of reluctantly kind of, well, yeah, well, like we're not really sure who did it. Oh, come on, we know that you know the same thing.
Western media was like, that's the only explanation. Russia must have done it, and then slowly it sort of came out that, oh, actually, that's this thing that seems improbable is actually probably not true.
Yeah, it was it was what it was. Whoever did it, I mean, that's the CIA Washington Post saying it was Ukraine who did it. Seymour Hersh has other ideas, you know, Biden administration. But at its core, what happened with that? I mean, it was an escalation of war. It prevented Germany from being able to negotiate with the Russians by turning the taps back on for the Nord Stream pipeline. And it made a real big issue for Europe. They had to buy Russian liquefied natural gas. They bought 40.
Yeah. Also, during the Cold War, when there were two Germanys, we had East Germany and West Germany. And West Germany, being a Western ally, despite being a Western ally, they decided, hey, you know what? Like, it would not be a bad idea to have a pipeline go from the Soviet Union into West Germany as well. Like, we need this gas, and our economy would boom, right? And of course, the Soviets would also benefit from this. It was like a win-win for Western Germany, who's not really an ally of the USSR, but still, you know, supposedly an independent country, right, making its own decisions, decides, hey, to make a deal with, you know, the USSR. And, you know, this would have been like a win-win situation for both countries. Then, of course, the U.S. government tells Western Germany, hey, come down. You need a pipeline. You know, don't worry about it. You know, like you'll get something else. And then, of course, post-Soviet era, you know, there's no more communism. When, like, then Germany and Russia have a pipeline. You know, like, you know, it's a win-win for both sides. And then, like, all of a sudden, this pipeline just disappears. I wonder who benefits from this, you know, from this destruction of this relationship, right? I wonder who benefits from this, right? Yeah, just, yeah, like it, yeah, because Jackson doesn't want to state his own opinion on YouTube, and I don't know if I should, but we all know who benefits from this.
Percent more liquefied natural gas from Russia in the EU.
Well, yeah, basically, Germany and the entire EU, I don't think they buy directly from Russia. I think he's saying liquefied gas
Over the past year. So, I mean, it just caused prices to go up. You have the German economy, you have the French economy, you have the Italian economy that are all in shambles right now. Europe is in an inflationary crisis. They're about to be in a recession. Germany's already in a recession. I mean, it's quite clear what's happening.
What do you think is the ideal?
You have the Italian economy over the past year. So, I mean, it just caused prices to go up. You have the German economy, you have the French. Real big issue for Europe. They had to buy Russian liquefied natural gas. They bought 40% more liquefied natural gas from Russia in the EU over the past year. So,
Because I believe that oil, basically the EU put sanctions on Russian oil, and Russia simply has been selling all their oil to India and China, and then Europe has been buying this oil from India, and it's Russian oil. So they're not buying it directly from Russia; they're buying Russian oil from India. So Russia's still selling their oil. Like Russia did not go bankrupt; they simply just continue selling to India and China, and then of course Europe is buying from India. Yeah, so yeah, we'll show those Russians. We'll make sure that they don't sell their oil ever. Okay, Europe. Well, Russia could buy. Could find new buyers. Like you think like Russia just relies on you. Get out of here. Oops.
I mean, it just caused prices to go up. You have the German economy, you have the French economy, you have the Italian economy that are all in shambles right now. Europe is in an inflationary crisis. They're about to be in a recession. Germany's already in a recession. I mean, it's quite clear what's happening.
What do you think is the ideal circumstance right now related to the war in Ukraine?
Like how a peace deal.
Resolution,
Peace deal.
yeah. But what is it?
Well,
Like, what's
I think if you listen to Putin, which no one in the Western press and Western governments, they try not to, I think he's quite clear about the fact that this 87,000 square kilometers of territory they've already taken is formally now part of the Russian Federation, and it should be respected as such. The former French president has come out last week and said that, there should be formal referendums in these regions to actually decide whether or not they want to join Russia.
It doesn't matter because Donetsk and Lugansk literally had their own referendums in 2014, and the West ignored them. And guess what? There were Western observers. There were people from the West who showed up to Donetsk and Lugansk, but the West ignored the referendum, and Ukraine just continued bombing Donetsk, and that's when the people in Donetsk got even more angered. Is the fact that even their votes don't mean nothing. So even more people joined the militias. They joined more the new rebel army that's being formed. So even prior to the referendum, there was skirmishes and shootings back and forth, and but it was only until there was this formal referendum on May 11th, 2014, in Donetsk particularly. And on that same day, on the day of the referendum, they're being destroyed. Actually, it was the day. No, it's not the day of the referendum. It was the day when the referendum was being counted. The votes were being counted, and they said, "Yeah, we're independent now. We're independent from Ukraine." And that's when the bombs, were sent into Donetsk. I mean, there were some bombings, but it was not as big. But that's when the Ukrainian Air Force, just started bombing the city. And, it just angered more and more residents of the city, and so, yeah, and the West, did not recognize those referendums. It was wait a minute, so Europe recognized this violent coup. It was an illegal coup in the Maidan. The West recognized an illegal, violent coup, which, by the way, the only reason why the coup was even possible is because the politicians inside the Duma, no, not Duma, sorry, the Rada. Duma is in Russia, Rada is in Ukraine. Duma literally voted illegally for the ousting of the legitimate president Yanukovych, illegally. And on top of that, number two, all of the Berkut's forces were basically ordered to leave. They finally got the orders to leave, and they just left. And they all went back to their chapters in the cities that they came from. And they were told to leave Kiev, so they left. Okay, and that's when you had the people the violent folks from the Maidan protests just storm into some of the buildings that they did not control, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we won." It's no, victory was handed to you. If Berkut did not leave, you guys would have just eventually just tired out and went home. Literally, give it another 2 weeks, and if Berkut held out for another 2 weeks, which they could have, like half the Maidan protesters would have went home, and the violent guys would have been totally outnumbered. The violent people would have just like they would have been there, but they would have been like outnumbered, and Berkut probably would have moved in closer and like knocked them out. Um, yeah, but that's just like but that's about 2014. But my point is that the West doesn't care about the referendums. Like, let's have a referendum. Yeah, let's just yeah, whatever. You guys like basically, the West did not follow the Minsk Accord. So like France and Germany, like they basically did not pressure Ukraine to follow the Minsk Accords. But like France is trying to save face right here and trying to tell everybody, oh yes, let's just kind of end this peacefully and let's have these new referendums, under Western observance. Screw that. Like, and on top of that, knowing me, like, Ukraine is not even a real country. The Ukraine is Russia. That's Russian territory. It should never been independent. It should have never been formed as a republic. It was always Russia. People there have always called themselves Russians until the communists came and started to make everyone Ukrainians. But it was always Russians, and it should stay that way. And that landmass is not enough. They should go further. And Kiev, the mother of all Russian cities, not holding Kiev, that's a slap to the face of anyone who's Russian. So Kiev definitely should belong to Russia. And screw the referendums. Those referendums like doesn't even matter. First of all, it's hypocritical because the West will not recognize them anyway, even if 1,000% of people vote. Oh yeah, like it's a 1,000% vote, like in favor of Russia. It doesn't matter. The West just does not care. They would not recognize it, and they would just say, oh, it's all fake, and yeah, like it doesn't matter. So screw those referendums. Like the Russian people there, they support what's going on, and that's that. And it's Russian. It's historically Russian territory. It's historically Russian land. Deal with it.
We've already seen these elections, though, and they weren't internationally regulated, but these people said they wanted to join the Russian Federation. And I think Russia's not going to stop and try for a peace deal again until they get Nikolaev and Odessa, which will landlock Ukraine, and also get the Kharkov region in the northeast. I think once they get that, maybe they'll try to push for peace proposals again. But until then, I mean, it's gonna be the same old people. Unfortunately, are gonna die because no one in the West is serious about pushing for peace.
Can I ask, what are the major differences between the Soviet Union and modern day Russia?
Well, the main differences, I think, I don't know. I think the Soviet Union was pretty base, but I think that the Russian economy today, if you look at the economy, if you talk about that, what is the basis of the Russian economy? Well, Soviet Union at its start, the country was at its knees. You had basically.
Okay, so I really don't like his answer right here. Okay, so Jackson, you could have just said, well, the difference between the Soviet Union and Russia is the fact that the Church of Russia, the Orthodox Church, now has more freedom. Of course, just to be fair to history, in the 40s and 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, basically the church was enjoying more and more freedoms with each decade. But at the same time, it was only post-Soviet era where the church just got so much more freedom. And so basically you could just say that's one of the differences is that the Russian Orthodox Church now has, more freedom and liberty. And guess what? And more people are basically coming back to the church. So there's like a low percentage of actual true Orthodox people. So Russia is culturally Orthodox. So majority of Russian people who identify as Orthodox are just they're just culturally Orthodox. They're nominally Orthodox. They're not really actual like Orthodox people who truly believe in the Orthodox faith. Because to be Orthodox, you have to literally believe the church. You have to believe that the faith that you're baptized in. That's when you're truly Orthodox. But like if you like don't like go to liturgy, if you don't go like basically to confession, yeah, like are you really Orthodox? Like yeah, just you're like basically an apostate at that point. But like because you're baptized, like things are easier for you to come back. It's easier for you to kind of be like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. And the thing is, more and more people are becoming more and more religious in Russia. So it's still like a small number. Like some people say it's 5%, but others say it's now 7%. Like the number went up from 2% to 5 now to 7. So more and more people are actually becoming true Orthodox. So majority of people in Russia are nominally culturally Orthodox, but like 7% are like truly religious Orthodox, which 7% is better than like the 2%, 1% they had like a couple decades ago. But now there's like this true revival where Orthodoxy is becoming more and more popular. It's becoming more part of the culture. The atheist yoke is like slowly like decaying, and um, like that right there, Jackson. Like you could just said, like there's no more atheist secular government, okay, because I believe Tim Pool's an atheist. So you could have said that like the atheist government is gone. I mean, like it's a secular government right now, but the people in the secular governments are at least somewhat religious. Like they're not atheists at all. Now Putin, he's actually religious. He's an actual like religious Orthodox person, but he's working within a secular government. So you have a secular government that does not persecute religious people, because in the Soviet Union, you could not join the party if you were not an atheist. Um, Basically, to join the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Now, I don't know what it was about what the rules were for the Polish Communist Party, for the Bulgarian Communist Party, the Czechoslovakian Communist Party. I don't know what their rules were for joining their parties, but the Soviet Union, to join the Communist Party, it doesn't matter which of the 15 republics within the Soviet Union, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Armenia, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, it didn't matter. You had to be an atheist to join the party. And it was only in the Gorbachev era where they got rid of that requirement. Basically, they gave more religious liberties. It was in the Gorbachev period when religious liberties were basically expanded, and the Orthodox Church, the Protestant churches, Muslims as well, Buddhists, people got more religious liberties, and people could breathe better, more. They could go, okay, like I don't have to worry about hiding my faith. I don't have to worry about people questioning me. So are you a religious person? Because you cannot get certain benefits if you're religious. You're basically disqualified from a lot of things if you were actually religious, especially Protestant or like something else. But basically it was in the Gorbachev period where they allowed religious people to join the party. It was like probably 1987, 1988 when they got rid of that restriction where you could now be religious as well. So yeah, so what happened? So the Soviet Union went from like kind of having like a pure atheistical government to like just a regular secular government with people who don't have to be atheists. But it was only post-Soviet Union where yeah, you now have like this huge kind of spiritual awakening, and religious people got more freedom, and the population just started to identify more as Orthodox. Even if they are nominal or cultural Orthodox, they still identify as Orthodox, and even politicians, they identify as Orthodox now too. And so that right there, just more religious liberties. Of course, in the recent years, cults are illegal. That's a good thing, by the way. I believe Mormons are listed as a cult. Jehovah's Witnesses are for sure listed as a cult. Therefore, they're not a legal religion in Russia. And I don't care. Like basically, like that's like because Jehovah's Witnesses. Sorry, you guys are cringe. You guys should just repent and become Orthodox. And that's my advice for you guys. um, what else? What other differences between the Soviet Union and Russia? Well, well, right now it's a war situation. So, I would say nationalism is now like allowed. Of course, there are some certain boomer cringe laws that were kind of passed like within the past decade, where, but at the same time, you can still identify as a nationalist, right? And nationalism is on the rise despite whatever laws they pass. Nationalism is still on the rise. There are still nationalist authors that their books have been printed and spread without any persecution, right? In the Soviet Union, those authors would be arrested, right? Like a lot of the stuff was underground, like underground publications. And so, yeah, nationalism is on the rise in Russia. The Soviet Union, so it's like kind of weird. It's like it's obvious there's some stuff that they did that were very nationalistic, but they just never called it nationalistic, and they did not even call it patriotic. They just like called it communist duty or something. It's like, dude, shut up. Just call it nationalism, okay? Don't be afraid of that word. But yeah, and so yeah, nationalism is definitely on the rise in Russia since it was kind of very it was popular in the early '90s, but it was very kind of it was popular, but like it was not noticed, not mentioned. Not everyone had the internet, and of course, who would want to be nationalist in a government in a country where it was really poor in the 1990s, right? But then again, if you're a nationalist, you will work to improve your country, and so Russian nationalists they started to become more and more popular. I'd say in the 2000s during Putin. Putin is the one who basically is the one who made nationalism more popular in Russia. Despite the fact that he might not identify as a nationalist, he identifies as a strong patriot, but that's because he's a boomer. But yeah, nationalism is on the rise, so that's one reason. That's one of the differences between between Russia and the current. Between current Russia, which is the current country, and the previous country, the Soviet Union. Also, the problem with her question is that she says Russia and Soviet Union, and like she needs to realize that Ukraine was also a member state of the Soviet Union. Belarus, Lithuania, Latvia, Moldova, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan. Did I say Tajikistan? Moldova. That lists all the Baltic countries: Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. Who else? Who else? Yeah, I think that's all the republics. I could be wrong. Did I say Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you have all these republics that were part of the Soviet Union. So it's not just so yeah, it wasn't just Russia, and like Russia did not just call itself Soviet Union. It was Soviet Union because you had all these other republics that were formed by the communists, and then eventually all these countries had to file applications to join the Soviet Union. I bet you guys didn't know that part. But anyways, yeah. So I also would have told her that Russia was not just the only one in the Soviet Union. All these other countries that I just listed, they were Soviet countries, and so like it's not just Russia and the Soviet Union. It's like basically it's not like an easy question to answer because like you should also ask what is the difference between Ukraine and the Soviet Union, right? Well, by the way, speaking of Ukraine and the Soviet Union in the Soviet era, when it comes to like persecuting like religious people, it was Ukraine who did a lot more to do that than Russia did. Oh, also, when it came to like conservatism, and when I say conservatism, I mean like kind of more like following the party lines. It wasn't Russia; it was Ukraine that was kind of more. Oh yeah, like we're the hardcore communists right here, because we're true Ukrainians. That's why, because being a true Ukrainian means to be a true communist. Of course, in Western Ukraine, it was not like it was not 100% like that in Western Ukraine, but Ukraine was very, very strict compared to Russia. Like Russia was strict, but it was more loose when it came to making local laws in their own republics. And of course, the Baltic states were even more loose on a lot of things. Like yeah, but that's like a whole different history of the USSR. But I would say that so Russia and the Soviet Union. It's not just Russia and the Soviet Union. It should be like Ukraine as well, and Belarus. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Okay. Also, what's another difference? Okay, so Let's go back to differences. Okay, one of the differences. Let's see. So I mentioned religious liberty, nationalism, religious liberty. I guess economics. I guess I would say the Soviet ruble was stronger than the Russian ruble. I don't know about now. I don't know about the modern day ruble. So yeah, because you could go to Google and write down, ruble to USD, right? Or USD to pound, right? And a quick Google search will show the comparison. How much is a dollar worth to a pound and pound to a dollar, whatever. And um, yeah, so but I think I did try to like look up modern Russian ruble and Soviet ruble, and like it's kind of hard to find like an actual chart that shows like the Russian ruble in 2023 and the Soviet ruble itself. Like it depends what year you're talking about too. Are you talking about the 60s and 70s? Well, by 1979, what's interesting, by 1979, the Soviet ruble beats the U.S. dollar, and then in that same year, the Soviet Union sent peacekeepers to Afghanistan, and that's when things started going downhill from there. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how like 1979, they finally made it to like beating the dollar, and yeah, like it happened. Like I saw that chart before. I'm not gonna look for it right now, but you guys could look it up yourselves. And basically, there was a time when the Soviet ruble beat the U.S. dollar. So I guess, oh yeah, and I did read one article where the Soviet ruble from like 1986 would have paid for a lot more than a modern Russian ruble today. Like it would have paid for like an entire apartment, for a condo basically. And I forgot how many bedrooms. I think like two bedrooms. And you would have had like a lot of money for food and yeah, because and I believe I think the article said like I think like if you made at least I don't know like 800 rubles a month, like you're set like in the big city like Moscow or Leningrad. Like yeah, 800 rubles a month was pretty big money. um so yeah. um and 800 rubles a month right now in Russia, who like anywhere, like not even in Moscow, just I don't know, like Kursk, Novosibirsk, Irkutsk, um, those cities. I don't think 800 rubles a month would do you any good. But in like the Perestroika era during the Gorbachev era, basically, in like 1986, 1988, yeah, 800 Soviet rubles. Yeah, like you're doing pretty well. Um, but yeah, right now with Russian rubles, ooh, it's hard. It's hard to, yeah. But same thing with the hryvnia too. Like 800 hryvnia is Ukrainian currency, and because we're talking about the Soviet Union and Ukraine and Russia right now, well, the Soviet ruble basically beats both of those economies together. So there's that. So I guess the Soviet economy or the Soviet ruble was worth more than the modern day Russian ruble. But at the same time, Russia does have like more choices in items. Russia has basically instead of just having like two or three different choices, like in the marketplace, right? Like you have only like two flavors of this, two different styles of this, right? And that's it. There's like a deficit. And if you really want some nice stuff, you sometimes have to travel to Eastern Europe, like Poland, where Poland, they would import a lot of Western clothing, Western music, right? And then in the Soviet Union, a lot of stuff was just limited, right? And modern day Russia has more choices when it comes to like the free markets. Like you could actually more consumer choices basically. And as a consumer, you have more choice in modern day Russia than you did in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, they had the ability to just open more of the markets and import more stuff. And their markets were open to like Yugoslavia and Poland and basically the Warsaw Pact countries. And for some reason, like, you know, I don't know, because the Warsaw Pact countries, Poland, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, they were fine. They were totally fine with, dealing with the West, trading, whatever. And for some reason, the USSR, like, they would do some limited trading with the, import, export with the West. It was just kind of, I don't know, especially with the USA. And so, yeah, like Russia right now has more choices for the consumers. Consumers have a lot more choices today than the Soviet Union. So that's like, that's the difference right there. But Jackson Hinkle thinks the Soviet Union was based. I'm thinking, okay, depends on what you're talking about by based. Did they have better? Oh yeah. So also here's another difference. Family. So yes, in the Soviet Union, the family structure was a lot more based than in modern day Russia. Although to be fair, modern day Russia, like when we're talking about 2023, the Russian government is focusing on getting rid of LGBTQ, ideology. So that's pretty based. Like Russia's focusing on promoting family values, but the thing is, they're promoting it and all that stuff. But like culturally, they're having some problems, because they got all this freedom in the 90s, right? Where you could do whatever you want now because we're free. The commies are gone, ooh, right? And then like the family values just dropped because the economy was so bad in the early 1990s and the late 1990s and up until the early 2000s. And then, things start to slowly get better economically, and only now, like for like the past decade, family values have been returning, but still divorce rates are unfortunately pretty high. But in the Soviet Union, it was like people had better moral compasses. Cheating was definitely, a bad thing. I mean, it's still a bad thing right now in Russia, but still, in the Soviet Union, they had better family values, culturally speaking, and family values were constantly promoted in the Soviet Union. But right now, Russia's kind of coming back to that stuff. But the thing is, it's coming back to it. It's not like it's fully fleshed out right now, right? So it's not fully fleshed out right now. So that's kind of that's a positive. But at the moment, I guess I would say the Soviet Union was more based when it came to the family unit in that regard. Um, let's see here. Hmm. I don't know about paychecks, because like it depends what you do right now in Russia and in the Soviet Union. It kind of depended, but here's the thing: for some reason, like a lot of like workers, like construction workers, would make more money than like people who were engineers or something. It was just ridiculous. And then doctors did not get paid that much, but like so you really had to love your work. You really had to love helping people if you were a doctor in the Soviet Union, because you were totally underpaid. And even post-Soviet Union, Russian doctors were overpaid. Right now, of course, things are way better for doctors. So I guess a medical staff in Russia is getting paid better, and I guess um, Russian medicine, it's better, and so it's kind of like this weird mixed situation for Russian medicine. So like a lot of it is not free, but at the same time, some stuff are free too. So some things are free, some things are not free. It depends what you get, what you do, and yeah. So unfortunately, there are some things where like it's not free, but like you gotta depends what you're trying to get. Depends on the operation that you gotta go through. And if it's not free, it could be really expensive, and you're still not making enough money for that. So yeah, but like yeah, but then there's some stuff some basic stuff that's free and you don't get charged, or if you do get charged, it's not an arm and a leg. So and it's kind of like it's a mixed bag right now. Like in the Soviet Union, it was just free healthcare all around, but what's the best healthcare? That will depend on the doctor who's treating you. And so yeah, so like yeah, so like right now, like the Russian economy. So sorry, not the Russian economy, the Russian healthcare system. It's definitely different than the Soviet healthcare system. It's not 100% free, but it's not 100% capitalistic either. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. But yeah, one thing for sure though is that a lot of Russian people here in the States and Ukraine too, well, before the war, let's say before the war, a lot of people from Russia, from Ukraine, like they will live here for a while and they'll just realize how bad, how you cannot afford to be sick in America, even with insurance. So forget the whole insurance thing. So even with insurance, obviously, you get charged an arm and a leg either way here in America. So Americans, they simply go to Mexico, right? If they want to get some dental work done or some procedure that, shouldn't be too hard in Mexico, they go to Mexico and it's super, super cheap, right? Russians and Ukrainians, they would simply just go back to Russia or Ukraine. And like, what's interesting, the flight over there and like seeing the doctor there would still be cheaper than whatever they'll be charged here in the States. So yeah, take that. So yeah, yeah. So like the healthcare is definitely different in Russia and then Soviet Union. Oh, the military. I think the Soviet military compared to the Russian military, well, it's hard to tell because like because the Russian military is definitely using way better technology right now. Like speaking of technology, right? But then the Soviet Union, their technology was not bad. I mean, they're pretty strong. They're a very strong country, and they had like a lot of troops, a lot of soldiers, and their technology, it basically fit the times. It was, so yeah. So I don't. So like their military is different. They have they have different. Actually, no. Like they don't have different ranks. I was going to say ranks, but their ranks are pretty much the same. There might be some slight changes in their ranking system, but also here's a similarity: the Russian military and the Soviet military, they don't refer to them to their commanders as because in the U.S. military, when I was in the military, we would say sergeant, captain, lieutenant, colonel, general, or like for a captain and a general, or basically any officer, right? If you're an officer, we just refer to you as sir. It would be like sir, right? Or sometimes we'll say captain, right? But for a sergeant, for an NCO, basically for any NCO, we just say sergeant, right? Um, and we don't add the word hey Mr. Sergeant, right? Or we don't say Mr. Captain, and we don't say Mr. General, right? We don't do that in the U.S. military. We just say sir or captain or sergeant, right? We don't add Mr. We don't add the word Mr. In the Russian military, before the Russian Revolution, before the communists take over, it was a Mr. Sergeant, Mr. Captain, Mr. General, and usually the generals were referred to as Your Excellency. But then in the Soviet era, Mr. was replaced by comrade, and the comrade was basically used, throughout the civilian world too, like comrade so and so, right? Well, in the military, they get rid of Mr. and they replace it with comrade, so comrade sergeant, comrade captain, comrade general, right? And so the Russian military still uses the word comrade in their military, in their military. So yeah, comrade captain, comrade general, comrade sergeant, like those terms are still used in the Russian military. So that's a similarity right there. They still use the word comrade, and comrade is not a communist term too. Like even in the U.S. military, I remember sometimes once in a blue moon, like the word comrade would be thrown around. Hey, we're all comrades in arms, right? We're all brothers and sisters here, like and then yeah, so. Yeah, so comrade, it's not a communist term. It's just more popularized by communists, but it's initially not a communist word, right? So yeah, what are the differences? So religious liberty, more choices for consumers. Dang it, and I was just talking about this too. So religious liberty, more choices for consumers. And basically a weaker economy. So, like, basically, yeah, I still would say the Soviet economy is stronger than the than the Russian economy right now. The Russian economy is doing better, and they're catching up, and they're, doing this whole BRICS stuff. But I would still say Russia is still, trying to catch up. I think they will eventually, pretty soon. But at the moment, the Soviet ruble and the Russian ruble, the Soviet ruble is still stronger, or was stronger, because the Soviet Union no longer exists. And so, so those are like three differences right there. And the healthcare system, it's different. In the Soviet Union, it was free. In the Russian economy, in the Russian healthcare system, right now, it's a mixed bag. So some areas of it is free, some areas it's not free, but it's also cheap too. So and that's four differences. So economy, consumer, I guess that's also economy right there for consumers, healthcare, and then liberty, religious liberty. So that's like four differences right there. And there's a bunch of other differences, but still, I wish Tim Pool would have gave some actual differences too. Instead, he goes, "Well, I think the Soviet Union was based." I'm thinking, okay, dude, you may think that, but not all Russians agree with this opinion.
A feudal society, and the Soviet Union took it from its knees.
Okay, so right here, he's promoting, the communist debunked propaganda. Oh, Russia was a feudal society. No, it wasn't. Russia, obviously had an agrarian economy because they had all this land, and like Russia was exporting so much grain and food to the West. Russia was basically feeding the world. Before the communist revolution, before the Russian Civil War, before the First World War, Russia was doing great economically. So it was not this feudal society. Russia was also advancing technologically. Like Russia was inventing stuff. Russia was experimenting with stuff. Like the Russian economy is doing great, and until the communists decided that they needed a revolution, and it was 1962 when the Soviet Union finally caught up to the levels of 1913. So in 1913, the Russian economy was let's say yay high, and then the Soviet Union, understandably, they had to deal with the Civil War, then they had to deal with World War II still, but it was by 1962 they got up to here. They got up to here again by 1962, right? Where it had the Russian Empire continued to exist up until 1962, they would have been a world superpower. So this whole Russia was a feudal society. Come on, that's actually Western propaganda and communist propaganda right there. But unfortunately, Jackson, he's a MAGA communist, and so the information he's spreading right now is just basically your basic communist propaganda, and it's definitely not true.
To a war superpower, won the Second World War at the cost of 27 million people, but it also centralized the important sectors of government, and we're seeing that in Russia today. Instead of in the United States, where we have all these rapacious, private companies that are hoarding our resources, hoarding our oil, hoarding our gas, hoarding our coal, whatever. In Russia, they have it under a public structure, it's under the government, and they can actually, utilize these systems to benefit.
Okay, well, that's also one similarity with the Soviet Union, I guess. Russia basically nationalized certain factories. Gazprom, for example, and a bunch of other industries were nationalized. But Russia still has some private stuff too. There's still small businesses. I forgot to mention small businesses. Small businesses exist in Russia. Small businesses are perfectly fine in Russia. There's also big businesses that are privately owned. Those exist. So, because I was thinking, what else? Dang, it's just so easy. I totally forgot. But businesses. Russians could own businesses in Russia now. In the 90s, it was kind of hard to own a business legally. You had to become a criminal. You had to become a mafia guy to own a business. Anyone who tried to start a business legally the correct way eventually will be killed by the mafia, bribed by the mafia, or put out of business by the mafia, or some politician would be bribed to shut the business down. That was in the early 90s when it was a big mess with the oligarchs and the mafia some oligarchs were former mafia too. So yeah, but like that was the early 90s. You know, that's when things were really horrible for Russia, and it was horrible to live in Russia at the time. Um, yeah, so yes, but yeah, one of the differences also businesses. Right now, you could have your own business, unlike the USSR where you could not for some reason.
Benefit the people and negotiate with other countries like BRICS partners in terms that are going to be beneficial to the Russian economy and the central bank. And that's what's happening with BRICS. You know, they're expanding very fast.
This matters a lot. Pull up, take a look at this from the BBC. Russian military control. Look at this. They have all going all the way down to Kherson, nearly to Odessa. All of Crimea and everything is under Russian military control. We keep getting told, or we've been told over and over again, that the Ukrainians are pushing back, but it really feels like what they're doing is, for every 10 conflicts that arise, let's say it's 10 battles, Ukraine wins one, that gets reported in the press. And so everything we hear is like, their counteroffensive is working, they're gaining ground. This is crazy.
And not
anybody
just that,
who's been
And basically, I've noticed the same thing. Ukraine will literally basically like the entire front would not move like 50 meters. Like if the entire front was able to just move 50 meters, and that's something. That's a victory. Wow, the entire front basically. Wow, like what a great operation right here, where Russians had to retreat 50 meters all over the front. That's how strong the Ukrainian army is. But no, you basically have like Ukraine moving 50 meters in a small area somewhere, like I don't know, they'll mark it on the map. Oh, look at this, like this 50 meters. Yes, Russians retreated. We took some 50 meters of land, and the press would just be like, yeah, look at this victory. Yeah, like I even like just started to ignore Western articles about any breakthrough that's talked about, because every single breakthrough they talk about is literally like, I don't know, not even a mile. Like it's not even a mile long. It just, okay, so the Ukrainians went like a couple of feet that way, and wow, some victory right here. Oh, Russians retreated, or like or even if it is a mile, right? It's like somewhere insignificant, and Ukrainians, and on top of that, Ukrainians will pay a major price. That's another thing that's not being told by Western press, is that Ukraine will literally just waste an entire military unit just to capture like a couple feet of land. And like the Russians, what's interesting, the Russians, they'll have like a few soldiers guarding some small location. And the Ukrainians will outnumber the Russians, and the Russians will eventually retreat because they are outnumbered, but they'll take so many Ukrainians with them. They're like the losses for the Ukrainian side are like huge, like Donald Trump, huge. I can't do that Donald Trump thing, but yeah, like they're like just huge. They're so huge, right? For like a small little piece of land, and oh, what a victory! And the Russians who are outnumbered would be like, okay, yeah, like we're not gaining anything. Yeah, we got no reinforcements coming. Okay, no reinforcements. Well, okay, we'll slowly, kind of pull back, and we'll find a safe zone right here, and boom, we're safe, right? While the Ukrainians, they're not outnumbered, but they're overpowered, and they'll still like have so many losses on their side just to take over like a few feet of territory, like a couple meters, and maybe a mile, right? And that's it. Oh wow, such a breakthrough. We're breaking through eventually. This one guy I was listening to earlier, he said, at the way like Ukraine is going at their current pace, it'll take them 500 years just to reach the Azov Sea. So like not even Crimea, just to get to the Azov Sea. It'll take them like 500 years if they go at this current pace. I don't know if it's a good calculation or not, but still, I thought it was pretty funny.
keeping track of this. I mean, look, Russia's basically won. They've taken the Donbass, they've taken the land bridge to Crimea, they've got it, and it's not.
Russia does not control 100% of the Donbass. There's basically when it comes to the Donbass, Lugansk is mostly under Russian control now. The Donetsk region still so the southern part has been taken. So right here actually, you can see this map that Tim Pool is providing. This map, Mariupol, right here. So this is also part of the Donetsk region. And so the rebels, they controlled kind of more like right here, this little tiny little line right here. And then like it was only with Russian support, because you had Russians coming in from this side, and then you had the rebels, armed by the Russians, finally coming in, moving in this way. And then you have some more rebels kind of take over some of this area right here. So like a lot of this area did not belong to the rebels. When Russia came in and armed the rebels, because Russia mostly did a lot of their fighting right here, throughout this part and through the south right here. This area, a lot of it was mostly conquered by the rebels, or sorry, liberated by the rebels. And so right here, like all these territories, they basically connected more than with the Lugansk region. The Lugansk region is right here, and so the Lugansk guys, they were more successful. And honestly, I think despite the fact that Lugansk controlled less territory in 2014, 2015, and throughout the 8 years of civil war, I still think that Lugansk guys had better strategists and tacticians than the Donetsk guys. Donetsk guys had a stronger military, that had more numbers, and they have a bigger population, of course, and so their army was bigger in size. But when it came to actual tactics and maneuvers and strategy, I'd say the Lugansk guys did pretty well. And had they had like a larger army, they would have probably like destroyed the Ukrainian army like a long time ago. But anyways, and now that they received some help from Russia, the Lugansk guys mostly took over most of the Lugansk area. I think this little white piece of land is probably like belongs to Lugansk. Then right here, some of this area right here is still the Donetsk region, and yeah, unfortunately, for the people living in Donetsk, the Ukrainian soldiers are still not far from the airport. They're still right here in this area. If you guys are looking at the mouse on the screen, you guys will see what I'm pointing at. It's right there. And so, yeah, so yes, so on the bright side, Russians control Mariupol, and the rebels were able to kind of take over some of these little lines right here because, and by the way, like I saw video footage of the rebels just like coming into these towns right here and right where this line is, and the civilians were like, "Oh, we're so frightened," and the officer, the rebel officer, he tells the lady, "Listen, lady," like he's pointing like towards where Donetsk is located. He goes, "The people there have been living in fear for 8 years, while you guys were, living comfortably here on the Ukrainian side." And yeah, and then he, of course, he tried to sort of guilt trip her and saying, "You know what, basically, you guys basically gave up, you were supporting us in 2014, then you guys kind of just gave up on the whole thing, and then like the people in Donetsk and right here in this small region in Lugansk right here, like they're just fighting off for like 8 years. They're trying to survive. They were abandoned for like 8 years, or partially abandoned at least, but still. Yeah, but I'm going off the topic right now. But yes, so unfortunately, not all of the Donbass is still under Russian control. It's still there's this portion right here, this little white spot right here. It's still under Ukrainian control right here, just like it was in 2014. But this part right here, this bottom part of the Donetsk region, is no longer under Ukrainian control. So Ukrainians completely lost this thing, and so yeah, let's keep going.
Over yet?
And not just that, but the cities that.
Oh, by the way, Russians are not in Kherson. They're literally right outside of Kherson. So I believe if you were to go into Kherson and you were to drive south of Kherson, I think a mile south of the city, and Russians are like right there. So yeah, Russians are literally right next to the city.
That Ukraine is taking. If you look at the pre-war populations for these cities, it's like 50 homes, 400 people, maybe a few farms. It's nothing. In this big counteroffensive that we put all this money to, Ukraine hasn't even reached the first line of Russian defense fortifications. They have 3 lines of defense fortifications that they've been building up since last November. Behind those 3 lines, they have tens of thousands of reservists. And then back in Russia, they have even more reservist soldiers than Russian soldiers in the whole of Ukraine right now. So it's only going to go in one way. It's going to go I guess two ways maybe. However Russia wants this to end, or mutually assured destruction.
Whatever happened with the Bakhmut situation? Because I know that just was in the news for the Ukraine war for a while, and now Prigozhin, which I'm
Well, like if he had a Telegram app on his phone, he'd know what happened to the Bakhmut situation. Like Bakhmut like was liberated literally in the springtime. Like we're already like at the end of summertime. We're entering in like the fall, the autumn season, and this guy's still asking about Bakhmut. Well, dude, look it up yourself, okay? Like even Western press kind of admitted, okay, yeah, Bakhmut is lost.
I'm also curious to your thoughts about how that's all played out. What's the deal with Bakhmut? Because I feel like we've almost seen a stalemate. There's been no progress either way. At least someone from as a casual observer of what's been happening in the war. So yeah, I'm curious to your thoughts.
Wagner, under the leadership of Prigozhin, so when he was still alive, months ago, they fully liberated the city. They took it 100%, so none of it remains in Ukrainian control. There's still some firefighting on like the flanks, the outside regions of Bakhmut or Artyomovsk, and basically what's going to
I really hate it when Jackson refers to it as Artomovsk. And on top of that, a lot of people like they've been, especially lefties, they've been referring to it as Artomovsk. And the thing is, it was named Artomovsk originally in the Soviet period. The communists, after a local communist decided to name it Artomovsk. And post-Soviet era, Ukraine kept the name Artomovsk, but then in like when Poroshenko was president in 2016, obviously that region, the Donbass region, it's under the civil war situation, and for some reason, like a lot of the Russian separatists were also accused of being big Soviet sympathizers, which is definitely not true. They're implying they were a bunch of commies, right? And so the Ukrainian government, for some reason, I guess they thought this would piss off the Donetsk rebels by renaming the city of Artomovsk into Bakhmut. But here's the thing, though. The Ukrainians, they're the ones who screwed this up, because Bakhmut was the original name. Bakhmut, by the way, it was basically the name. It was a Russian name given in the 1700s. It was founded in the 1700s during the Russian Empire, right? And so it had nothing to do with Ukrainianism. The name Bakhmut had nothing to do with Ukrainianism. And then, the Soviet era comes. It's renamed Artomovsk, and then post-Soviet period during independent Ukraine, right? It's still named Artomovsk, and then like the president changes it to Bakhmut just to piss off the rebels, and okay, whatever. And so I don't know what I don't know what the Ukrainians are trying to gain here. You just kind of gave it like its old Russian name, right? Okay, so it's still Russian. It's not like you guys could have just renamed it to something Ukrainian, right? Something Bandera something. No, they decided to just give it its old Russian name back, which I'm not against, because I'm not a communist. But still, at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, well, the Ukrainians kind of played themselves, and yes, and then so as soon as Wagner and the Donetsk military and the Russian military, as soon as they were basically liberating Bakhmut, like a lot of journalists and a lot of people have been kind of slowly calling it Artomovsk, right? It's now Artomovsk, right? And I'm thinking, no, can't we just keep the name Bakhmut? At first, I was thinking, yeah, like maybe it should be renamed Artomovsk. Then when I just kind of looked at the history real quick, I kind of realized, oh, yeah, I think Bakhmut should just stay Bakhmut, okay? Like we don't need this communist renaming again. And of course, Jackson Hinkle, he's a MAGA communist, and so he's totally okay with the whole Artomovsk. I'm thinking, nah, don't call it Artomovsk, call it Bakhmut. Call it by its original Russian name, not by its communist name.
happen over the next several months is the Russians are about to start an offensive of their own because they defeated the counteroffensive from Ukraine. They're going to focus on the flanks.
Also, just to kind of ask Jackson Hinkle for some consistency here. For example, like if he's so consistent, why doesn't he call Volgograd Stalingrad? Seriously, like if you just want to be like super like communist here, okay, and you're calling Bakhmut Artomovsk, right? Why don't you just call Volgograd Stalingrad? Seriously, just be consistent with that. Like yeah. Also, why do you call? Also, I noticed that he'll call St. Petersburg, but why do you call it that? Call it Leningrad. If you want Bakhmut to be Artomovsk, then why don't you call St. Petersburg Leningrad? Be consistent with that at least. Like, like okay, seriously, like if you're going that route, like like why don't you call it Leningrad? You know, like why do you like why would you call Volgograd Volgograd? It should be Stalingrad, right? Personally, I prefer Volgograd to be renamed Tsaritsyn, but honestly, I don't care. Okay, like Volgograd, it seems like a normal name, despite the fact that it's a renamed during the communist era, but still the Volgograd refers to the Volga River. Okay, whatever, it's a neutral name. Um, yeah, but yeah, like St. Petersburg, why don't you call it Leningrad? Yeah, I'm glad it's no longer called Leningrad. But I got a question for you, Jackson Hinkle. Would you be okay with Russia just renaming St. Petersburg to Leningrad? Like seriously, like no, no, keep it by like a good name. We don't need, Russia does not need communism.
Of Bakhmut, they're going to focus on maybe Kherson, and they're definitely going to focus on taking back the whole strip of land in the northeast, the Kharkiv region. They're going to probably take all of that back. And then we'll have some down period, and then next spring is when you're going to have the large blowout of the Russian soldiers pushing in the south all the way through Kherson to Odessa. They're going to completely landlock it and take all of that.
Okay.
It's kind of crazy to see, because I've not been actively tracking the maps of control, but they kept saying that Ukraine's winning, Russia's losing, they're on the verge of defeat. They kept saying that Russia's suffering massive casualties. And now, let's operate under the assumption that the reporting about massive Russian casualties was correct and Ukraine was winning. How does Russia now have total military control of the land bridge to Crimea and then some?
And it's not like this is, under contest. In Mariupol, Russia's already gone in. They've built new schools, new grocery stores, new hospitals. They've built free apartments for the people there.
Okay, so yes, Russia has been rebuilding brand new state-of-the-art schools. Very impressive. Russia has been rebuilding a lot of the destroyed buildings. The city. If you watch one of my previous live streams, I show Mariupol being rebuilt, being renewed by Russia, and its life is going back to normal there in Mariupol. But regarding the free apartments, I don't know about that part. And again, I'm thinking, for some reason, I feel like Jackson, sometimes he gets his info probably from some I don't know, some overexcited communist who is hoping that once the whole denazification process happens, then the communists will take over. Well, they won't. The communists will not take over. The centrists will take over. But seriously, I feel like someone's feeding Jackson some exaggerated information regarding certain things, and and whoever's feeding him this information is probably hoping that Russia will become communist. It won't, because we'll get to that, but I'll get to more detailed explanation as to why it won't become communist. But still, I just want you guys to know Russia will not become communist.
They're happy, and the numbers are lies, as I'm sure we can all assume. They lie about everything in the mainstream press. I mean, Ukraine's it's like a generation of men, 400,000 men. Russia's got 4 times the population of Ukraine. How could anyone ever expect that Ukraine was going to win?
I saw a meme.
Well, to be fair, in warfare, numbers don't always mean a lot. It mostly depends on how you fight the war. And what's interesting, Russian troops were outnumbered. You have to think about this. It's not about the numbers, okay? Because when Russia first entered Ukraine in 2022, literally outnumbered. There's no way that all those outnumbered troops could have been could not have been stopped. And on top of that, what's interesting, for 3 months before Russia's invasion, Ukraine had a mobilization program. They're mobilizing soldiers. They had a large army. They had a lot of people. And what's interesting, there were no actual border battles, like maybe some shootout maybe somewhere, but that's it. There's video footage of Ukrainian border posts, outposts right there. And you have the camera footage just playing right there. Those 24-hour video cameras. They're just showing Russian soldiers just like the convoys, actual convoys, just going through, just going into the crossing the border. Like who? Where are the border guards? You know, like basically because in Russia and Ukraine, border guards are actual like they're military units. And so where are the border guards with their tanks? Where's the border guard air force? Right? Like seriously, like where are they? They are not there. Because what's interesting is that Ukraine, for some dumb reason, was still sending majority of their troops to the Donbass region. Now they're kind of dispersing, they're kind of spreading them out to the Zaporozhye region, but still, like the Donbass is still their main focus for some dumb reason. It's like Ukraine is still in their minds is fighting this civil war against the Donbass for some reason. So back in 2022, like I saw the video footage. I'm like, where's the resistance? Like, where no one's fighting. Like Russian troops just entering the country. Pff, pff. Try that. Try that like in Texas. See what happens. Seriously, no, don't try in Texas. I don't recommend it. but still, like we know what would happen if this happened in Texas. Like immediately, like all the army bases that are right there, like all the army bases in Arizona, New Mexico, all the Air Force bases, the Marine Reserve base in Arizona, everyone would be activated immediately. You know, like seriously, there would have been some kind of halts at the border somewhere. You know, maybe some parts of the border there's a breakthrough, other parts of the border there would have been some kind of halting. But no, Russians kind of outnumbered, enter, northern Ukraine, the Kharkiv region, and the south. 2 weeks, I believe it was like not even 2 weeks, and Russians enter Kherson like just easily. Like there were some bombings, some artillery fire, there were some tiny skirmishes not far from Kherson, but other than that, Melitopol and Kherson, like easily, like there's video footage of Russians like entering with their convoys into Kherson. And what's interesting is that those convoys did not really face any battles. They just kind of went, okay, into Kherson. And no resistance. People going back and forth, like to work, to school, shopping, whatever. And they're like, oh, cool, cool Russian vehicles. Okay. And the only actual resistance were a few Ukrainians who came out with protest signs saying, get out of here, Russians, we don't like you. And the Russian guys in the tanks, they kind of like, okay. So they just kind of moved back, and they went, we'll go down this street then. It was funny. Like you had like 10 Ukrainians like, yeah, we'll not let you pass. And the Russians are like, okay, we'll just back up the convoy. Okay, then the first vehicle in the convoy, make a right, go down this street instead. That's it. That's the only actual like battle in Kherson. But yes. So yeah, just to correct Jackson here, you don't need like large forces to take over, right? It all depends on who's running your military, and the Ukrainian military, literally, despite the fact that they're fighting a civil war for 8 years, like you would assume that they would have been better with their tactics, their maneuvering and stuff like that. No, they just like where were all these soldiers? 3 months before Russia's invasion, Ukraine was supposedly ready for an invasion. They're planning their defenses. They're planning so much, and Russians outnumbered go in from the south, and they go in from the north, and they send small units to the Donetsk and Lugansk regions to reinforce them, and that's it. And boom, the south gets easily conquered. The north basically. Not Kharkiv, but like basically Chernihiv, like all these regions like right here just gets easily conquered, and then we all know what happened later, but still like you don't need large amounts of troops, so it's not necessarily the numbers when it comes to actual warfare. So I guess Jackson Hinkle is implying the whole Soviet myth. Oh, Soviets just had so many soldiers and they just threw soldiers to their deaths in World War II. That's kind of like a yes and no situation. Like sometimes stuff like that happened for a reason, and but then at the same time, like there are many battles, many operations where Soviets did not waste so many troops. Or sometimes if the Soviet troops were wasted, it's because the Germans had a good defense as well. So, there's multiple reasons. But yeah, but it's not necessarily this. You need a large army. And or I don't know, maybe Jackson's implying that like Russia has like, a lot of reservists. So even if Russia lost their troops, they would have sent those reservists in. But at that point, Russia would have been like, I guess it would have been safe to say Russia could just lose the war if they're just wasting so many of their troops and they could just send in older reservists, And at this point, Russia's still not wasting the reservists. Like there are still a few that they use, but not as much.
That could be propaganda. Who knows? And it was a 4chan green text where it was a Ukrainian dude, and he was like, 1 year ago, I'm engaged, about to get married. I'm working at my job, making an okay wage. Everything's fine. He's like, today, log on to social media and see my fiance dancing in a slutty dress in Germany, having a party at a rave. And I just got my draft papers. I'm going to be sent to the front lines where I'll probably die. Why is my life like this? Yeah, the people there, I mean, I got to be honest, the people I knew fled. The people that I knew from Ukraine aren't
Facts. It happened. Like so many people fled.
there anymore. And they're posting pictures on the beach and other places, and I'm just like,
What's interesting, so many able-bodied Ukrainian patriots, they fled too, but they're still super duper patriotic inside. What's interesting, like a lot of Ukraine's patriots, the best Ukrainian patriots, like the biggest Ukrainian patriots, they live in the U.S. and Canada. They don't live in Ukraine. Screw that. They don't want to live in Ukraine. They just want to be patriotic for Ukraine, but they don't want to. But they don't want to live in Ukraine. And many Ukrainians, even right now, like who are currently living in Western Europe, in North America, like as refugees, they all said that they're not going back. They don't care. Like even if Ukraine wins the war, even if Russia loses, Russia's destroyed. It doesn't matter. They're not going back to Ukraine. And but they'll still be patriots. They'll still love. Oh, my poor Ukraine. But they will not go back. They don't want to go back. I just think it's kind of interesting. So Tim Pool is referencing the situation where the guy he sees his girlfriend going to nightclubs and he's while the guy is at war, right? Like what's going on here? what am I fighting for at this point? Yeah, that's how patriotic your girlfriend is, bro. And actually, what's interesting, it's those slutty Ukrainian women who are like super duper patriotic online, but then they're going out to the nightclubs and like they're dancing with all these other rich dudes, and a lot of them are involved in actual prostitution, but they love Ukraine. They're so patriotic. They're so pro-Ukraine. Oh, but like they're doing all this other stuff too. Like they're cheating on their boyfriends while their boyfriend's fighting, and they have no plan of coming back. It's like, yeah. And on top of that, there's other video footage from last summer. No, not last summer. It was in the fall. Actually, hold on. Yeah, it was last summer. They're showing Ukrainian elites, the children of Ukrainian elites, hanging out at the pool area. This is Ukraine, by the way. This is not even Western Europe. This is somewhere in the Kiev area. Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. And people are hanging out at the pool, dancing. You have all these like dudes, and the dudes vary in age. Some were like 18 through 30, others were like 30 through 50, 50 through 70. Anyways, just all sorts of dudes, right? And so you have all these dudes, hanging out with these young women, literally, and they're like some of them are like massaging them, and like rubbing oil on their back, all this stuff, and they're all partying, having a good time at the pool. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, isn't there a war going on right now? And aren't you all like able-bodied, right? And like seriously, there are literally men dying out there on the front lines while this is going on in Kiev. Like all these guys partying with all these hot women, and you're and like it's like, wait a minute, like and I'm still wondering why Ukrainian soldiers are continuing to fight. Because Ukrainian soldiers, they know this. They know this is what's going on. And for some reason, like it's not computing with them. Okay, maybe you're fighting the wrong enemy, right? It's like, wait a minute, maybe the Ukrainian government, the government that you're trying to fight for, they're the bad guys, okay? Because, but then you have these guys who are coping and seething. For example, there's a video footage that I saw where there's a Ukrainian military unit where they lost many soldiers, and it is and like they're complaining and they're saying, we're being sent to meat grinder. We don't have any reinforcements. We don't have any help. We don't have any assistance. And on top of that, they're demanding that their commander be switched because apparently their commander is a traitor, right? And I'm thinking, wait a minute. So you guys are losing. You guys are sucking at fighting. And for some reason, your commander is a traitor and secretly working for the Russians because your commander sucks? No, your commander is just corrupt. No, your commander is just a retard or some kind of moron, or he's just corrupt, right? Or maybe it's just because it has nothing to do with your commander. Maybe your commander is a patriot, but like the Russians are just destroying you guys because you guys are just not competent at warfare, all right? But for some reason, the Ukrainian soldiers are still seething and coping, and they have all this bad stuff going on to them, right? And they're even questioning, what are we fighting for? It's like, yeah, what are you fighting for? You should just realize maybe it's a lie, right? And they know it's a lie, but they seethe and cope. They seethe and cope, and yeah, it's just pathetic. And yeah, like so like, what are Ukrainian soldiers are fighting for? Because there's another video footage that came out recently. Again, same thing in Kiev. Young men and women, and old men hanging out with the young women, just partying it up, having a good time, yeah, party up, while you have all these other guys fighting. And it's no longer younger guys. It's now like, men's fathers are fighting. Their grandfathers are now fighting for what? Like literally, this whole situation, like the Ukrainian soldiers right now, they're the ones who are currently at fault. It's because at this point, do you not realize who you're fighting for? Do you not realize you're fighting for a lie? But yeah, like I went on a tangent right now. Sorry, guys.
Like, what is Russia's moving in, they're taking, and I'm just seeing the media lie about what's going on every step of the way. How do we end this and just say enough? Because at this point, I don't see an argument based on this map for Russia gives up territory it won in a military conflict. You lost. Perhaps a peace deal could have happened a long time ago before Boris Johnson destroyed it. And then you could have actually preserved some of this land under Ukrainian control or prevented the death of people and ceded it in the first place. I don't see how this ends well for the rest of Ukraine or for NATO. I do honestly think that if U.S. interests and NATO refuse to let go of this, it's going to escalate into a more direct conflict.
I think it depends on who gets elected. Trump said, he sounds insane when he says, I'm going to end the war in 24 hours, right?
I believe it.
But yeah, of course we believe it, because if you withhold funding for...
We're going to have, once I'm officially in and hands on the Bible, this is done.
Okay, guys. Guys, I'm going to fast forward a bit, okay? Because I think like right here, like in this little part, it's okay, but then like towards the end, it kind of gets a little cringe on Jackson's part. And that's the point of this live stream, is to kind of, do some more review and a critique of Jackson. So let me fast forward a bit.
Bet they'll try and get him on the Logan Act or something before he hear it that often in the general messaging from the press. Much like with the war in Iraq, they hate us for our freedoms, which was completely meaningless to people who paid attention, but sure, worked on those who didn't. I'm curious, from your point of view, why did Russia invade, and what is their goal, and what are they ultimately hoping to achieve now?
To put it as quickly as possible, Ukraine is not a sovereign country. It's just not a real country anymore. It wasn't since the U.S. came in and toppled their government in...
Well, actually, Ukraine, guys, Ukraine was not even a real country back when it was started by the communists. And of course, Jackson Hinkle will not tell you that part. Yes, but yes, Jackson's speaking the truth right now. Yes, basically, the U.S. government toppled, the Ukrainian government in 2014. But my point is that Ukraine was always part of Russia, and like I kind of wish Jackson would mention that part, because I do remember Jackson was even reading this one letter that Putin was citing, and where where like basically historical evidence shows that Ukraine was always Russia. So like Jackson knows that part.
2014. You have a sovereign government topple your country, do away with any form of elected representation. Say this guy's leading your country now. If you don't like it, they're going to sick these Azovite or right sector thugs on you in the Donbass. They killed 15,000 individuals in the fighting, many of whom were civilians in the Donbass from 2014 when the coup took place to 2022. The Communist Party of the Russian Federation is the second largest party in Russia. They were begging Putin to go in and save these people in the Donbass for the past 8 years. They were saying, you're insane. Why are you?
Okay, this is where I got to stop the guy right here. Okay, where does he come up with this? I don't remember the Communist Party ever, making like an official statement. By the way, the Communist Party of Ukraine, they're the ones who betrayed Yanukovych. What's interesting is that the Communist Party of Ukraine, they also could have prevented the civil war in the Donbass region had they had any spine. They would have prevented the ousting of Yanukovych, and the whole situation in Ukraine would have been stabilized in 2014. So, and that's the Communist Party of Ukraine. And what's interesting is that the Communist Party of Ukraine did the same thing that what American conservatives try to do here in America. Oh, well, let's just kind of disown this type of, fake conservative. He's not part of us. He's too extreme for us, right? And let's just follow the legal procedures, and then guess what? They get ousted as well, right? And so, like the communists, the communists of Ukraine, they did the whole, maybe they'll like us better. And what's interesting is that the Communist Party of Ukraine literally betrayed their own constituents, because they were elected, and they're elected to office. There's a certain population of people in Ukraine that supported the Communist Party, yet they basically had an obligation, being elected representatives in Ukraine. They had an obligation to stop the whole illegal ousting of Yanukovych, despite the fact that Yanukovych was not a communist, despite the fact that Yanukovych was, an imperfect, definitely not a perfect person, but still, they had an opportunity to stop the whole thing right there and then during the whole Maidan situation. And after the post-Maidan stuff happened, when the civil war was starting in the Donbass region in the southern part of Ukraine, for some reason, the communists, only one communist woman stood up and actually talked about how Donbass is being bombed and people being murdered, and and of course she was shut down, and of course she was told, "Oh, you're promoting Russian propaganda lies, blah blah blah." And what was it, in the summer of 2014 is when the Communist Party was officially banned? Like, bam, like they were gone. Like literally, actually, screwing the timeline. It was not even the summer. It's more like the fall of 2014 that they're just gone. Like the autumn 2014, they were officially gone. Okay, and so and then who started? By the way, who started the whole rebellion against Ukraine when the Maidan stuff was happening? Who started the whole rise of the Donbass? It was Russian nationalists, Russian monarchists. Because Jackson doesn't know this, but I lived in that area for about 1 year, and guess what? I did not really see too much communist groups out there. Now, to be fair, there was a communist militia formed later on, but originally, you had all these other different militias that were formed. A lot of them were Orthodox monarchist militias. Some of them were just straight up nationalist militias. Others were centrist militias. And you had a teeny tiny bit of some kind of lefty socialist types. And on top of that, you also had a few teeny tiny national socialist types as well, and pagans, right? But like very tiny, very few. But then there was this one American dude from Texas. I never met the guy personally, ever, but like we had a few interactions on the internet, positive interactions. But basically, he's a communist from Texas, and so his name is Texas. His nickname is Texas. And so he, a former U.S. veteran, and so he decided to go to Donbass as a communist and, fight for the people there. And course, there was a communist militia formed called the Essence of Time. That literally, what kind of person names a militia the Essence of Time? So the communists there are some communist volunteers from Russia who kind of came to the Donbass and got with the local lefties, and they basically started their militia, the Essence of Time. They were like a tiny militia, like no one even like took them seriously at all. But within Russian territory, for 8 years in a row, it was Russian nationalists like Igor Strelkov. Say what you will about Igor Strelkov. You don't have to like him, like whatever. But he's still a monarchist. He's still a nationalist. And for 8 years in a row, he's been complaining that Russia literally could have taken over not just the Donbass, but even all of Ukraine in 2014 had they simply just sent in the troops, the official troops, into Russia, and boom, the Donbass would have been taken over easily. They would have like had their own Crimea situation, because Crimea, like things happened, like because in the Donbass, people wanted to happen like in Crimea. They wanted to have their own referendum, and Russia comes in, takes them in, and guess what? If Russia had done that in 2014, had Russia done that, there would not have been any civil war in the Donbass. Crimea and Donbass both would have been part of Russian territory, and Ukraine would have just had to deal with it. On top of that, it's extremely highly possible that Russia did like another surprise attack into Donbass, and then from the north, boom, the Ukrainian military, first of all, they would not be able to resist. On top of that, in 2014, Ukrainian military officers were telling the rebels, they're telling them, listen guys, if Russia like just shows up, if you guys tell us when Russia will invade, we'll literally switch sides. But Russia never came for 8 years in a row. Russia never came. The Donbass was abandoned for 8 years. I remember living there within a year, but even within that first year, like it was just crazy, like and a lot of people felt like weird, and I felt weird, like we're like nowhere, like because the Donbass, like the Donetsk region, for example, they had a border with Russia in Donetsk. And the Donetsk guys set up their own border patrols because the original Ukrainian border guards were gone. So they created their own customs service for the rebels. And so basically, like to enter Russia, you had to go through Russian customs. And then to enter the Donetsk region, you basically had to go through Donetsk customs. Because Russia did not accept Donetsk officially, did not accept Lugansk at all. They simply sympathized with them, and they allowed humanitarian aid, of course. That was there all the time. And then you had the Minsk Accords. Russia would talk about the Minsk Accords, and just follow the Minsk Accords, Ukraine. Please follow those Minsk Accords. And for 8 years in a row, like Russian nationalists, not communists, not the communists, maybe individual small groups, but not the official Communist Party. I don't remember them ever making such a statement. Now, Russian nationalists / monarchists, Russian nationalists and monarchists, they were the ones constantly going on YouTube, going on social media, demanding that Putin just goes in and take over the Donbass at least, right? Go to war with Ukraine or something. And the communists, yes, they had sympathy for Donbass, true. But here's the thing. What the Russian communists did not like was the fact that originally, when the Donbass rose, it was because of nationality. It was because of language. It was because people identified as Russians. Not because of just working class. Yes, working class people, coal miners. Yes, that was part of it, but it was the Russian identity. And true communists, they don't believe in nationalism at all. They literally, they want to unite for class line under class lines, but they don't want to unite under national lines. And so, of course, the Russian Communist Party in Russia, they did not like the fact that Ukraine officially had a lot, not officially too. I'll be it became official in 2017, 2018, but unofficially you had Azov walk around with their swastikas. You had the right sector and their Nazi stuff. You had all this other stuff. Oops, did I just say the Nizi word? Okay, I hope the stream does not get banned. Okay, but yeah, you had all these other, NAZI, National Socialist stuff, all these nationalist socialist groups that are formed on the Ukrainian side. Okay, but those people, and obviously they're the enemies of the communists, but they're also the enemies of just Slavic people in general. So any Slav who identifies as that type of group, it just doesn't study history. But here's the thing: so the communists simply did not like those. I don't know if it's safe to say swastikas. Like, so, yeah, okay, YouTube, please don't censor my live stream if I said that word. So let me double check. Yeah, it looks like I'm still live. Okay, so YouTube didn't shut me down yet. But yeah, but seriously, the communists simply, they did not like that, and they protested that verbally. Yes, and they would, and Ukrainian politicians, by the way, a lot of Russian talk shows when Ukraine was in their civil war at the Donbass, a lot of Ukrainian politicians would go to Russia and they would be invited to Russian talk shows, and they would have these like live debates with other Russian bloggers, Russian, you know, um, political activists, and on top of that, and not just Ukrainians, there'll be some people from Ukraine who are pro-Russian, and then you have some people who are within Russia who are pro-Ukrainian, and they would all, argue back and forth, right? And um, yes, and of course, a lot of communists would be invited on those shows, and they would denounce nationalism, unfortunately, and they would talk about how it's bad, how like these national socialists, how these national socialists are bombing the people in Donbass. Yeah, they'll kind of not like this, but that's it. But they would not. But the Russian communists would not promote the nationalism. They would not promote the idea of a Russian identity there. That because the communists, they created Ukraine. That's why. Because if you go further back, you start to realize, wait a minute, this whole mess could have been avoided had the communists not created Ukraine. If the communists simply left Russia the way it was, just simply like Russia, Belarus, Ukraine included, Belarus, Ukraine, and then you have Russia, just like Russia, just Russian Federation. And then when the Soviet Union broke apart, well, you'd have Russia and the other republics leave each other. But then, there would not be any Ukrainian groups. Ukraine would not exist. Belarus would not exist. But the communists, they decided to divide up Russia, and they created the Belarusian Republic and the Ukrainian Republic. All of that could have been avoided, but the communists, they decided, no, we're going to create communist Ukraine. And then, of course, communist Ukraine becomes independent Ukraine. And then years later, the West takes advantage of this with their NGOs. And yeah. But I don't remember the Communist Party of Russia officially stating that Russia should save the Donbass. Russian monarchists have been officially stating this. Russian nationalists have been officially stating this. Even Russian pagans have been officially stating this. Basically, but communists, I don't individual communists, yes, lefty people, kind of like socialist types, individual commies, yes. But not like the Communist Party as a whole. I don't remember that. Maybe there is a statement like this, but I don't remember them begging Putin to intervene physically.
You doing anything? Why aren't you withholding energy to Ukraine? Why are you doing something? So they were very critical. The other fact here is that in 1991, Secretary of State James Baker said NATO is not going to extend 1 inch east past thing. Why aren't you withholding second largest party in Russia? They were begging.
Also, he's mentioning second largest party in Russia. Okay, who cares? Literally, because a couple of years ago, they were the third largest party. They went from and then they became second largest party. I don't know why, but a decade, less than a decade ago, they were in third place when it came to the federal elections. But the third largest party from right now is the Liberal Democratic Party, the LDPR. And but right now, Jackson, he's not telling people that the largest party, number one, first place, is the United Russia Party. So here's the thing. So the party that's in first place, United Russia, and the party that's in third place, the Liberal Democratic Party, By the way, a liberal Democrat Party, they're not liberals, they're not Democrats at all. They're kind of like these like center right nationalists. Like so they're centrist, they're somewhat right wing, and they would identify as a somewhat of a nationalist party, right? Of course, the liberal media and the Wikipedia describes them as these far right party. It's not a far right party. It's just like a center right nationalist party. So that's the Liberal Democratic Party. So you have the United Russia Party and the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia. Those two parties, like if Russia is in a civil war, right, and let's say it's between communists and non-communists, guess what? The LDPR and the UR, they have a lot more in common to unite with each other than with the communists. Like United Russia definitely does not like the Communist Party at all. They don't like the communists. Just right now, the top three parties, the United Russia, Communist Party, and the LDPR, what they have in common is that they all basically support the Donbass in their own ways, of course. Like in their like. By the way, the LDPR. By the way, speaking of political parties in Russia that made official statements regarding saving Donbass or at least invading Ukraine, the LDPR, the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia, the center-right nationalists, they're the ones who've been pushing for war with Ukraine. They're the ones who've been pushing for this. But the CPRF, the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, I don't remember them making such statements. They condemned Ukraine's, National Socialist ideology, which, of course, officially Ukraine is not National Socialist. It's not. Ukraine is a very secular, centrist system, and it's somewhat lefty in a way. So yeah, it's not like lefty, it's not righty. It's just kind of just a centrist state. Even right now under Zelensky, it was always centrist, mostly centrist. Like it wasn't like it became temporarily kind of, National Socialist, but like it's still like it was under Yushchenko, but even under Yushchenko, it was still centrist. It was like a centrist National Socialist thing, but it was not even National Socialist, because, they respected the rights of Russian-speaking people. Even then, they were lighter on the Russian population there, back then. But yeah, so yeah, Ukraine was mostly just a centrist government. Even right now, it's very centrist. But of course, the CPRF, they just did not like the National Socialist people for the past 9 years in Ukraine. They protested that, but to actually encourage Putin to invade, no. But the LDPR, they're the ones. Their position was like Zhirinovsky, the former chairman, he's dead now. But the former chairman of the LDPR, he constantly talked about just taking over Ukraine, saving the Donbass. So the LDPR, the actual nationalist party in Russia, they've been screaming it. They've been shouting from the rooftops. But the Communist Party, I don't remember them saying any of that stuff. And like I mentioned earlier, individual communists, yes, sure, I've seen that. I've seen those YouTube videos. But the party as a whole, I highly doubt that.
Putin to go in and save these people in the Donbass for the past 8 years. They were saying, you're insane. Why are you doing anything? Why aren't you withholding energy to Ukraine? Why are you doing something? So they were very critical. The other fact here is that in 1991, Secretary of State James Baker said NATO is not going to extend 1 inch east past of Germany. They violated that promise, I think 16 or 18 times now. They got all the way to Ukraine. That was the red line. Boom. I mean, that's that. And the violence didn't stop. The escalation continued up until the week in which this war started. But again, I don't think this war started on February 24th, 2022. I think it started back in 2014 when a foreign government came in, seized power, and started to commit violence against any dissidents in the state of Ukraine.
But do you think that the goal of Russia is to oust the Ukrainian government and to establish a legitimate government, or is it actually to control the land into Crimea? That's what it strikes me that that's what they're looking to get. I
think multiple things can be true at once. You can also acknowledge that the land that Russia sees, it's resource rich. That's $12.4 trillion in resources in that 87,000 square kilometers. So multiple things can be true at once. But yeah, I think the end goal here is to have a government in Kiev that is not backing Nazi thugs that are killing people in the Donbass. And I think,
Well, yes. Because Putin is a centrist, he's not like a true nationalist, I would say. But I would say that yes, the end goal is kind of just to, like Putin said, like one of them is the denazification. The other goal is to stop NATO, and number three is to save the people from in Donbass from being killed. And but like a lot of Russian nationalists, Russian monarchists, they say go further, go to Kiev. Others say go all the way to Lviv, right? But like even right now, just taking over Kiev is enough. But it looks like Odessa and Nikolaev are basically, if the war continues, like Odessa and Nikolaev will definitely fall into Russian hands.
Yanukovych was a guy who was cooed. He wasn't explicitly pro-Russian, but he was also looking at EU contracts, doing deals with the EU and integration with the EU. I think Russia just wants someone that's going to be fair in there. But if it comes to force and forcibly putting someone in, I think we can all assume it's going to be someone who is going to be pro-Russian.
Do they ever talk publicly about their war goal, the Russian Federation?
Of course.
What is their stated goal?
Stated goal is denazification of Ukraine, do away with all these, these Nazi battalions, Nazi political parties. From 2014 to 20.
I don't know why Jackson's focusing just on that one issue, right? There's other issues, right? Mostly stopping Ukraine from joining NATO. That's like the number one, right? The whole denazification thing, that's kind of more like, okay, like that's more on a moral point. Okay, yeah, we also need to get rid of these people because, by the way, Ukraine was also part of the Soviet Union. And during World War II, many Ukrainians fought bravely against the Nazis. And here's the thing, prior to Russia's invasion, right, many Ukrainian soldiers fighting in the Donbass region, fighting against the Donbass rebels, many of them honored their grandfathers who fought in World War II, and they even made propaganda videos. The Ukrainians made propaganda videos where the Donbass rebels were labeled as Russian fascists, right? And I saw this one commercial where it's not May 9th, because Ukraine kind of got rid of May 9th. They kind of celebrate on May 8th, but they still honored the World War II veterans. And basically they're showing this Ukrainian old man putting on his uniform, and it's this old Soviet military uniform that he wore. And apparently this was not an actor. This was an actual Soviet World War II soldier, officer. And so he's on the phone with his grandson. And his grandson is using a smartphone, and they're talking together, and goes, "Hey, grandfather, I'm wishing you a happy holiday." And his grandfather says, "Yes, grandson, I fought the German fascists, and you are continuing by defending Ukraine by fighting against the Russian fascists." So, yes, Ukraine's like this weird mixed bag. So, you have this centrist kind of government, but then you have these Nazi battalions, but then at the same time, the regular Ukrainian military is not necessarily pro-Nazi, and they don't care about those. They actually hate those battalions, right? And on top of that, a lot of the Ukrainian population, they're not pro-Nazi. They're very centrist. And then you have another part of the Ukrainian population which is super, super liberal. So you have this tiny, tiny, tiny portion of Ukrainians. I'm not talking about their military. I'm talking about their population that's National Socialist, very tiny. And then of course the military battalions, they're doing a lot of damage. They're hurting civilians. What's interesting is that Ukraine's National Socialist battalions, they're the ones who are hurting civilians on purpose. They're the ones raping women, killing children, all this stuff. And so a lot of this stuff, it gets aired and spread throughout the internet, and people are wondering, why isn't the Ukrainian government doing anything about this? And on top of this, it's also a major contradiction, because you have Ukrainian soldiers who love their grandfathers who fought World War II in the Soviet army. And then on top of this, basically, you have this situation where it's wait a minute, on the one hand, Ukraine says, "Oh, we don't have any National Socialists," but at the same time, they have these National Socialist brigades fighting in Donbass and all over the front lines, and so you have this weird contradiction, because you're trying to honor your World War II veterans who fought in the Soviet military while at the same time praising, these private battalions, that are wearing swastikas. So like, it's like this weird schizophrenia thing going on, like in Ukraine, and so yeah, like Ukraine's a major walking contradiction, because on top of that, you also have like Ukraine, you have also like a huge side of Ukraine which supports the whole LGBTQIA rainbow stuff. You have that part of the voter base right there, right? You have that part of the population too. So yeah, right now it's like a major mess. But yes, denazification is one of those reasons. It's one of the more moral reasons, right? The official reason is definitely to protect Russia's sovereignty, Russia's borders from NATO. That's like the main reason. So I don't know why Jackson just doesn't go with that. I don't know why he just has to kind of focus on the whole denazification stuff. And I'm thinking he's not wrong, but why are you focusing on this? It's not the main issue.
2018, there was a good deal of Nazis within the Ukrainian government. 2018 onward, it wasn't the case. But the chair of the Verkhovna Rada in Ukraine from 2014 to 2018, he was a self-described Nazi. This guy said, well, I don't know if I should say that here. I'm not going to say it, but you can look it up online for yourself. These are people who really profess these views. You see the videos that Laura Loomer posted in Orlando this week of these guys with swastikas.
One thing, guys, I'm surprised. Like, here's the thing, Laura Loomer, like, even if she does tell the truth, her reputation basically went totally down the drain. So right now, even if she does tell the truth, and even if it's the truth that kind of that I perceive as the truth, I just would not take her seriously on anything, because like Laura Loomer, like, she loves to exaggerate on a lot of things. And Laura Loomer is also part of the tribe, the same tribe that Zelensky's a part of,
And they're saying, we support Joe Biden because he's sending rockets to the Ukrainians. These are the guys that are fighting over there. These are guys in government in the Verkhovna Rada, and they're trying to strip the Russians of their ability to speak Russian in Russia, all that stuff, right? So denazification, demilitarization is the other goal, stated goal of the Russians. That's just simply dealing with NATO and saying.
And again, Jackson, I don't know why he's focusing on that one issue, right? Like, there's other issues, like basically Russia's borders, and again, to reunite the Russian people of the Donbass with Russia.
You can't come over here. You can't put nukes right on our border. They're going to be so close. They said that the U.S.
Okay, to be fair, he's covering NATO, so okay, I probably probably went a little ahead of myself, but yeah, okay, so he's you talk about NATO right here.
Said that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that the nukes in Cuba, or the missiles in Cuba, that was a threat. Those were putting missiles right in our backyard. Well, I mean, like, if you look at Ukraine, how close they are to Russia. I mean, it's right on the border, and you're going to put nukes there. That's basically putting nukes in someone's living room.
Well, not just nukes, biolabs. The biolabs, they're real. Basically, that's also one of the reasons. Like, it's kind of one of the more hidden reasons. But yeah, like biolabs, like that's one of them.
How do you think this ends?
However Russia wants it to end.
Based on, so what does that mean? Does that mean Russia takes all of Ukraine?
I think
I'd say that'll be the best outcome historically. And the communists, they'll be like, oh, what? Because, like, basically, the communists, how they view Ukraine as a brotherly nation, but not as the same nation. Russian nationalists, they view Ukraine as not just a brotherly nation, but the same exact nation.
I think if the warmongers keep doing what they're doing, you're going to have Poland because they're building up Poland as an economic power. They're trying to topple Germany, France, Italy. They're restructuring the EU. Poland's going to move into Western Ukraine, Lviv, with the consent of the U.S. and the deep state. Russia will take, again, if this happens, Russia will take everything, including Kiev. And, Kiev and Rus, it used to be Russian.
Yeah.
So it could happen.
Well, yes, because Kiev was the mother of all Russian cities. So, yeah, guys. Okay, so that's like the end of that segment right there. So, or that clip. I don't know. Whatever. But, yeah, that's the whole... so this whole video right here, I just thought, okay, Jackson, literally, you could have done way better. you were totally fine with Piers Morgan. Like you literally destroyed Piers Morgan, and I just kind of wish Jackson, you did a lot better here. But and of course, I don't know, like maybe it's because of your political views, but still, you're on Tim Pool, dude. Like your political views definitely will not will not really slide there. But then there's other video clips of Jackson talking with Tim Pool, so maybe I'll watch those, maybe I'll critique those. I don't know, because I also want to do other stuff, because lately I've been like wondering, okay, why am I focused on politics so much? I need to kind of roll back a bit and do some video game stuff, because my channel is not just about politics. I do say in my description that I want to talk about entertainment and like video games. So yeah, so like maybe I don't know, maybe sometime I'll make a video about Kaisar's Legion. But yeah, oh yeah, so like that's all I had to do. And like I said, I wish I don't know, like if I was there, I would have like definitely would have not been promoting the commie version of certain events, but whatever. But yeah, like I don't hate Jackson. Like I think Jackson is a great guy. I just wish he would change his political views on certain issues. And because I think Jackson's Orthodox. If he's Orthodox, Jackson, let me tell you something. If you're Orthodox, you could definitely not be a communist. Yes, your political views are private, but at the same time, like your political views, they also contradict a lot of what the church teaches. So if you are a Orthodox person, if you're baptized in the church, like I would rethink my political beliefs. And I'd recommend you to actually study up on Russian history, by the way, too. Like do some more Russian history research, not this whole stuff that you told Tim Pool. Oh, the Soviet Union lifted Russia out of feudalism, and come on, really? Come on. Like Russia was literally like catching up with the First World, and Russia actually caught up really fast. Then the First World War happened, and the Russian Civil War, and the Communist Revolution, all this stuff, and then the Soviet Union happened, and then and then the Soviet Union breaks apart. A lot of things slow down for Russia. Okay, a lot of the bad stuff would have been prevented. Ukraine would have been prevented had had the communists not come to power. And just let you guys know, had the Soviet Union not existed, Ukraine would not have existed. There would not be any Ukrainian Socialist Republic. There would not be Ukraine as a republic right now. Had the Soviet Union not existed, had the communists not come to power, had the communists not if the communists did not win the Russian Civil War, Ukraine and Belarus would not exist. It would have been just Russia. It would have been Russia. And I'm not talking about the Russian Empire. I mean just Russia proper, actual Russian territory. It would have been just Russia. There would not be any Ukraine. Ukraine would not have existed. And this current war with Ukraine would not have existed either. But yeah, so that's my review. Like, I do wish Jackson well, and I hope he, and I hope he does better in the other video segments. I need to watch those too, and like I hope he does better with Tim Pool on that, because there's a video where Jackson, I think he debates Tim Pool. Let's go right here. So this one might be too hard to watch because this one would just make my blood boil, I think. And not Jackson, but the topic might. But this debate, Jackson debates Timcast finds common ground. Okay, so I'll have to find this one later. Like this one I might not review. This one I might just kind of do my own thing, just watch it on my own. But yes. All right, guys, it is already almost midnight here. Y'all have a good one. Take care. God bless you. Also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and go to my links. The links are in the description below. You could go to my store, buy some merchandise, or go to my patreon.com/altmonarchist. Also, the links below in the description. Check it out. So support me, support the channel.